And I'm just going to open us up really quickly, and then I'm going to hand the floor over to Jackson Pavelka. We're super excited to have Jackson with us. Really grateful for the hours of effort that he's put into. Sorry, Clint, you have the longest index finger of all time. Every time I look up and you're trying to hit mute or something, it just, man, that cracks me up. Sorry. Um, all right.
Gotta change the
So,
view.
all right. So we're going to talk. Can you go to the other view
Yep,
until
sorry. I don't know why it did that.
gallery?
Go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Um, all right. So let's dive in. Uh, as you guys know, one of the greatest gifts that God gives us in this life, and to some no, but uh, to those who do, one of the greatest gifts God gives us is a spouse, is a life partner. Um, that relationship mimics so much of our relationship with God, and it really helps us to understand more about our relationship with God. Similarly, our children do something um, in the same manner, right? They help us to understand unconditional love. They open the door to that. But having a spouse, a life partner, another human that has committed themselves to you in sickness and health, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, and committed themselves to be with you to death is a really beautiful thing that God created to help us understand more about our walk with Him. And so I'm going to read a couple of verses just to introduce this subject, and then we're going to turn it over to Jackson. But I want you guys to think about Matthew chapter 5, verse 8. And before we read that, I just want you to do your best to be present for this discussion here. And I want you to think about if your spouse was the only person you'd ever seen in an intimate manner. If that is the only person you'd ever seen in that manner in your life, how would your life be different? I'm not asking you to answer this publicly on the call, but I want you to go there with me and process this. If you had nothing to compare your spouse to, that's just a gift that God gave you, sort of as Eve and Adam first saw each other and had nothing to compare themselves or to compare each other to, nothing to look at and grow in dissatisfaction, just this gift. From the moment they saw each other as they lived out their life, they were initially the only two people. In Matthew 5, verse 8, the Bible says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." We often interpret this verse to mean if you live a life in pursuit of purity, you will ultimately see God at the
You're
end
not
of
at a good
your
time
life.
right now.
But I'm not exactly sure that's what this verse is saying. I would actually ask you to consider that purity opens the way to intimacy. That if you can remove the distractions or the world's view and you have a pure heart, then you can be able to see who God is on an intimate level in this life. When we see someone for who they are and are not distracted by the world's view of them or the better thing the world is trying to offer us, then true connection can occur. When our hearts remain pure, we can see the other person for the gift that they are without the deceitful distractions that the deceitful distractions of Satan, which are unrighteous because they damage the relationship. In Proverbs 5, we're going to read verse 1 through 18, and I just want you to listen as Solomon, who we know did not live a life of purity, listen to his plea with his son. He says, "My son, pay attention to my wisdom. Incline your ear to my understanding. It's interesting. He doesn't say, pay attention to wisdom. He says, pay attention to my wisdom. Pay attention to my understanding. Why? So that you may maintain discretion and your lips may comply with knowledge. For the lips of an adulteress drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she's bitter as wormwood, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps take hold of Sheol. She does not ponder the paths of life. Her ways are unstable. She does not know it. Now then, my sons, listen to me and do not turn away from the words of my mouth. Keep your way far from her and do not go near the door of her house. Otherwise, you will give your vigor to others and your years to the cruel one. Your strangers will be filled with your strength, and your hard earned possessions will go to the house of a foreigner, and you will groan in the end when your flesh and body are consumed, and you will say, how I hated instruction, how my heart disdainfully rejected rebuke. I did not listen to the voice of my teachers, nor incline my ear to my instructors. I was almost in total ruin in the midst of the assembly and the congregation. Look at his warning about the impact that a lack of purity has on you and your relationships. You give your vigor to others when you lust after them and you desire something that you should never have been looking at in the first place. You give your years to the cruel one. Strangers end up filled with your strength. Ultimately, someone else can end up with your hard-earned possessions, and you'll groan in the end when your flesh and body are consumed. And the wife or husband of your youth, that relationship is fractured and spent. And Solomon says you will groan in the end. But then he gives a contrast. He says, drink water from your own cistern and fresh water from your own well. Should your springs overflow in the street, streams of water in the public squares? No, let them be yours alone and not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth. And he goes on to continue this contrast about being satisfied with the person that God created for you and gave to you. And so it's so important that we paint for our children the reason why we want to protect their purity. 1 Corinthians 6:18 talks about how all other sins are outside the body, but he who sins sexually sins against his own body. It's destroying the one thing that God's given you. I'll give you one other example, just again to set our mind here. Our girls came home when they were young from a friend's house. And one of my daughters said to Tammy, just said, hey, mom, you know, when I was at so and so's house, I noticed that they had a picture of this cute boy, like a poster of this cute boy on their bedroom wall. And he was clothed, but it was a suggestive picture. She didn't use that word, but that's the only way I can think to describe it. And it pricked her conscience, but she didn't know why. And Tammy said to her, she said, well, let me ask you a question. I think it was Emily. Let me ask you a question, Emily. How would you feel if your dad had a picture of a really attractive woman in our bedroom that wasn't mom? And my daughters immediately said, or Emily said, no, absolutely. She got very defensive and visibly upset about that idea. And uh, And Tammy said, well, why? Why not? And because Emily said, because daddy chose you. And it bothered her, even the thought that I would want someone else, that I would want to look at someone else, that I would think someone else makes me happy and mom doesn't. That bothered her. And then Tammy said, well, let me ask you a question. The boy that you someday will marry is probably alive right now. Do you want him looking at pictures of girls on his bedroom wall? And Emily said, no, I would want him to protect himself. I wouldn't want him to look at that stuff because I would want him someday to like me. And Tammy said, right. So do you think that it would be appropriate for us or for you to have pictures? And Emily said, absolutely not. Right? It's this whole idea of protecting our purity is not only a way we protect our own bodies so we can enjoy what God has prepared for us, but we are protecting that relationship. We are protecting that purity. And so we're going to talk about that today. Jackson is going to go into the subject of pornography, and I'm so grateful that he's taken the time to do this. Um, but my prayer, guys, is that each one of us, when we get off this call tonight, um, will be sober where necessary, but that we will have something practical that we can implement this week, regardless of whether you've got a 5-year-old or you've got a 15-year-old, whether you have a child who's been exposed to pornography or whether you have a child who hasn't been exposed
Yeah.
to pornography, that everyone will get off this call with some takeaway that you can do, but also hope. Because God is the great healer, but the quicker we can help to get our hands wrapped around this particular thing in our homes, the quicker we can protect our kids and ourselves from a lot of pain. You wanted to share
Yeah.
something?
Yeah, and Dave is sharing that again as we introduce this topic and we talk through stuff with Jackson. We just don't want to create rules. That's why Dave shared that story.
Mhm.
The goal is to motivate our children to want to guard and protect what they see and observe. They're going to see stuff, and Jackson will talk about
Mhm.
that. But how we present it, and as Dave did, he shared that story not in a way of shaming
Mhm.
and especially if your kids have been exposed. But the point is motivating them to save their eyes and their exposure for somebody special one day.
Mhm.
And then if they have been exposed, then that's a whole nother story of that God can still heal
Yep.
and God can work through that because that's happened with a lot of men and women. So healing can be brought in too, which we can talk more about that later. But the goal is the beauty and the motivation to not be prohibition. Like you
Mhm.
can't do
Prohibitive.
this, prohibited. So just wanted to say that was the goal of sharing that. Hopefully not to make anyone feel bad if you have been exposed or your kid has been,
Mhm.
but just more painting it in the why we want to do it.
All right, so we're going to hand the time over to Jackson. Jackson, you can start speaking whenever you want, and as you do, we'll just make you the host, and then we'll swap the screen so that everyone can see you easily. But anyways, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes? Yes. Okay. Awesome. If you're joining, before I introduce myself and get into some very just quick introductions, if you are on from your phone or dialed in via a phone call, you are going to lose a little bit of the impact of what will be shared. I have some slides and some information that may be helpful to you. There will be notes that go out afterwards that I've given Dave, but just something to keep in mind if you do want the full, I don't know, Jackson experience. Yeah, you can you can switch devices while I'm going through a couple of things here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and while I do that, oop, just kidding, hang on. While I do that, I want to go through some disclaimers. Uh, One, I'm not a parent, so I appreciate you trusting me with don't judge my desktop. Um, with your time and with your children. Uh, all right, I need to stop talking while I figure this out. Just kidding. Um, okay, do you see the slideshow? Sweet.
Yeah, looks great.
All right. Uh, Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for showing up. This is not an easy topic. This is something that can be very emotionally triggering, emotionally charged. And so I just want to right off the bat say thank you for trusting me. And maybe you don't trust me yet, and that's okay. I'm here to earn your trust.
Yeah.
Want to touch on one of the things that Dave said.
Really?
Um, he talked about the destruction that porn and lust can cause. And I just want to reiterate that when you take God's design for sex and you take that out of the realm where he designed it to be, the blast radius is extremely large. Additionally, the earlier that you consume or are exposed to pornography, the harder it is going to be to move past it. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about tonight. Not, uh, it's not going to be comfortable. I'm going to be direct, but not going to tell you what to do. Ultimately, your family is your own, and I'm a guest here. And with that, I am going to get started. Oh, last thing, if my eyes wander, I have two screens here. One has my notes, which is where the camera is. The other one has the slideshow, which is what you see. And so if I'm jumping back and forth, I promise I'm not watching a movie or something. I'm present with you. So with that, I'm going to introduce myself. My name's Jackson, so you already know. In high school, I was exposed to pornography for the first time. Became immediately hooked. There wasn't really an escalation period into my addiction. It was something that was an immediate gateway for me to feel accepted and feel comfortable. My addiction eventually led to additional acting out and behaviors that impacted my faith, impacted my marriage, impacted my career. I'm over 2 years free from pornography. I've been through a recovery program that was incredibly helpful with that. And through that, just God has kind of lit this fire under me to want to help other people. I've been speaking to a lot of people in the space of protecting children and uh, fighting back against the pornography industry. Um, and I've also gone through a course to become a certified sex addiction recovery coach from the American Association of Christian Counselors. All right, quick rundown of the agenda. One, we're going to talk about the porndemic. That's what I call the saturation of porn in our society. It's a term that's used by several people, several scholars and counselors and practitioners in this space. We're going to go through some myths versus truth that parents believe. We're going to talk about talking about porn in your family. We're going to go through some things where your kid may have already been exposed and you just need help. Maybe you're struggling as a parent to help them. And you know, you love your kids. You want to be able to do something for them. We're going to go through some resources that are available to you, and then we're going to have a moderated Q&A. All right, we're going to start with a quick video to get things going here.
Jackson,
think I'm
we
hearing
we
the
can't
audio.
hear the video. You might need to yeah, share the audio.
No audio?
Yeah, we can't hear it on our end.
Uh, 1 second.
I believe that'd be on your share screen. When you share your computer, you have an option to put that on there to share audio on video.
Yep, there it is. Okay. Try this again.
Looking at a rose, but I remember being a kid and
Is it working now?
Yep, sounds
looking
good.
at a rosebud. And I remember thinking, oh, well, I want it to open up like a rose, so I'll just pull back all the petals. Now I realize you can't force that. And it's very similar to a child's sexuality. If you try to open those petals too early, they will grow and they will open, but they're not going to be the same person that they would have been.
I found porn when I was 11, 12 years old.
We're in this playground and a friend of mine was like, hey, Richie, I want to show you a picture.
We watched porn and he told me, he's like, I watch it all the time, it's not a big deal. But then at some point in it, he stopped seeing women as people because porn distorted his whole thinking.
We are in the midst of the largest unregulated social experiment in human history.
Because internet porn has the ability to cause addiction-related brain changes.
And the free porn, which is the most accessible, is actually the most violent, dehumanizing pornography.
That so many young men are now seeing as being normal. This is how it happens.
It's like the heroine of pornography.
And I'm like, oh, I need to experience what I'm seeing.
So he tells me, and it just like felt like I got punched in the heart.
All right. That's a really powerful video, but I wanted to set the stage for really what we're up against as parents. Well, I'm not a parent. What you're up against as parents, and what the church is up against as well. Gonna really invite you to take these stats in and also note that they're 7 years old, no, 9 years old now. So these have gone up substantially. The exact same statistics just weren't repeated in the same study or in the repeat study. The average age of exposure to pornography is 9 years old. 90% of children ages 8 to 16 have viewed pornography online. 80% of teens ages 15 to 17 have had multiple exposures to hardcore porn. And 89% of sexual solicitations of youth online are made in chat rooms. If you think your kid won't or hasn't viewed pornography, you're probably wrong. So how do we raise kids to live in this world, but to not be of this world? One of the things we're going to talk about tonight. One of the things that we need to understand about pornography is that everything that the pornography industry does is highly intentional. If you take a look at the ads here, you can see advertisements from Pornhub that are directly targeting teenagers. You can see that they're trying to normalize the use of pornography. They're trying to make it fun and funny. This is the same company that during Arbor Day will do a campaign called Gives America Wood, and they'll donate a tree for every 100 videos that's watched on their website. It's brilliant, and it's sinister. The impact that this is having on the church youth is intense. Youth leaders, when surveyed, recognized the urgent need to tackle the topic of pornography. 56% of 205 polled youth leaders said pornography is a major or significant problem among youth in their church. 86% said it is important to address the topic of pornography and compulsive sexual behavior with the youth in their church. A pop quiz here. Which of these apps do you think allows access to pornography? And just think about that for a second. Don't answer. But just, take a look at the screen, sit there for a second. And those of you that know me, probably know the answer, but the answer is all of them. The Bible app in particular is something I want to take a moment and talk about. And I'd like you to make a mental note that from this point forward, you will actually appreciate that almost every application, regardless of its purpose, allows some hidden access to Google that does not obey the restrictions that you've set on your child's phone. Because remember, the internet was made for access. So in the Bible app, which has click-through access to Twitter, which is now X, you can actually find Google's X page, which has google.com as a hyperlink, which you can click on, which then takes you to a hidden Google search bar that will not obey the iPhone's restriction settings. Same thing for Yahoo's Twitter page, Bing's Twitter page. Without ever leaving the actual Bible app ecosystem, the app can turn into a porn trap. Gaming. I would be willing to bet that if you have a boy in your household, and increasingly girls, they like to game. Games like Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite all allow strangers to message or voice chat with children. Predators will use these chats to build trust, share content, and eventually move kids to a less supervised platform. One of the things I would encourage you as parents to do is to learn what games your kids actually play. Explore the parental controls that are available on their devices. Keep gaming in shared spaces outside of their room and talk often. Reinforce this truth. Gaming isn't the enemy. Unchecked access to strangers is. One of the products that I want to focus on tonight, specifically as it pertains to gaming, is called GameSafe. This is an app that you can use to monitor your child's gaming chats and behavior. All of your kids' games and all of your kids can be seen in one dashboard, and you can review chats and conversations as they happen. You can also set up alerts where if something disturbing is happening in a conversation with one of your children, you can act on that and shut it down. All right. This is one of my favorite topics. And this one of my favorite topics because it helped me understand so much of my addiction and my addictive tendencies. So we're going to talk about brain science. But we're not just going to focus on brain science as a whole. There's a whole nother level of brain science that is even more intensive, or that is even more relevant to kids being exposed to pornography versus an adult. Children have more mirror neurons than adults, which allows them to learn faster. Simply put, a mirror neuron is something that allows in the brain that allows the child to, the more they do something, the faster they'll learn it. And as most of us on this call can probably relate to, as you get older, you have less mirror neurons, and it takes you longer to learn something new. Second thing we want to talk about tonight is the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for executive function. That's things like impulse control, making decisions, weighing risks, and it doesn't fully develop until a person is in their mid-20s. Again, the prefrontal cortex does not fully develop until a person is in their mid-20s. And the third piece we're going to talk about is the limbic system. This is the emotional center of the brain. This is responsible for basic functions like hunger, thirst, anger, fear, and sex. The limbic system is very sensitive to possibly rewarding behavior, risk-taking, and adrenaline. The limbic system starts developing way sooner and much quicker than the prefrontal cortex. The last item I want to touch on here is dopamine. Dopamine is a natural drug that your brain releases that focuses attention, provides a brief reward, and then helps us remember how to experience the reward again in the future. And so you may be asking yourself, great, now I know how certain pieces of the brain work, but how does this help me help my kid? Well, let's put it all together in an example, and this will help us see why porn is so dangerous to children today. Let's say a child encounters porn for the first time. The child's going to be naturally curious about what people look like naked and sees the super normal stimuli of today's porn. They get a hit of the dopamine from their reward center. The child feels shock, but also a surprising dose of good feelings in the reward center of their brain, housed in the developing limbic system. The dopamine focuses the child's attention to the point of tunnel vision. Even if the child wants to look away, because the limbic system has progressed so much further and developed so much quicker than the prefrontal cortex, which would be the responsible for the decision of looking away, the executive function, it overpowers the underdeveloped prefrontal cortex and they don't look away. The additional mirror neurons they have only compounds the problem because all that has occurred is easier to learn and do again. The dopamine hit eventually is not even enough, and the child needs more and more extreme or more novel content to achieve the dopamine hit. So kids' brains are really a chemistry set that the porn industry has preyed upon and sees that they can set themselves up to live in that kid's brain for a very long time. We're going to go through a few myths versus truth. Um, Before we go into this, I want to reiterate again, I'm not a parent. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to share information and I'm here to help the best that I can. So if anything I say comes across as me telling you that you're wrong or maybe challenging an experience that you've had with your child, that's not my goal. And so with that, just keep that in mind as we go through these. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I just want to be really clear about that. This is a place for grace, and this is a place for openness. Myth number one, my kid isn't interested in that stuff. The truth, curiosity is normal. Porn is designed to be addictive, intentionally. The average age of first exposure in 2016 was 9 years old. Myth number two, my daughter wouldn't look at porn. Truth, 33% of girls aged 13 to 24 admit to actively seeking porn. This is not just a boy problem. And I want to take a quick moment to speak about the growing rate of women and girls consuming pornography. Because within large evangelical churches in the US, it's very difficult to find a church that has a support group for women addicted to porn. Conversely, men's groups everywhere have regular dialogue about these issues. And to be fair, every statistic shows that men maintain a sizable lead in the terms of percentage that admit to having a porn addiction. But Barna in 2016 found that 33% of females aged 13 through 24 and 12% ages 25 plus admitted to seeking out porn daily, weekly, or monthly. And in the more recent study done in 2023, Beyond the Porn Phenomenon, 50%, nearly 50% of women admitted to regularly viewing porn. Myth number three, we use a filter in our family, so we're fine. Filtering without accountability or a plan doesn't address intent. In 100% of homes surveyed by Barna that used filtering only software, kids still access porn. Barna also found filtering only homes still had a weekly or daily porn use in 27% of families. If I bring it up, I might give them ideas. Silence communicates shame. Talking first gives them the language to speak when, not if, they encounter pornography. And this is something that for me, growing up, I did not have. My parents did not teach me about sex. My parents did not talk to me about sex. My parents did not teach me I was a sexual being. I had to. I chose to go look for that elsewhere, partially in light of that. This is not saying to throw away wisdom around timing and start having inappropriate or age inappropriate conversations at a poor time, but it is saying that by saying nothing, we promote shame. Because silence tells me, oh, well, I shouldn't talk about that because no one else does either. if I'm a child. Myth number 5, it's just a phase, they'll grow out of it. Truth is, the earlier porn exposure happens, the deeper the neurological and spiritual impact. Call back to the brain science we just talked about. The earlier it happens, the more addictive it can become. And left unaddressed, it alters relationships, empathy, and identity. All right, so we've talked about the myths, we've talked about the brain science. How do we talk to our kids about pornography? We need to talk early and we need to talk often. If you find yourself in a challenging situation as you start to go through some of these talking points with your kid, I would say, I would tell you to ask yourself, would you rather have a 2-minute awkward conversation or watch your kid go through a 2-year recovery journey? It's not a binary choice, and I understand that, but it does provide you some context around the importance of having these conversations when they need to be had. And this is going to sound very silly coming from me, but tone is everything. Don't do all the talking and make sure you listen to your child. Really listen. Make eye contact, intentional listening. Do some discovery. Ask about what are your friends doing? What are your friends talking about? And make sure that you keep the conversations age appropriate, which we're going to go through right now. Here's some conversation tips if you have kids ages 2 through 6. This age is going to be very literal. So we need to make sure that we limit what they consume. We should also be intentional about finding out what they know. Keep it simple. Use proper names for body parts and emphasize that the bathing suit area is private. Ages 7 through 12. Some kids on the bottom ends of this age range may have difficulty with what's real and what's pretend. Older ones are going to be developing abstract thinking skills using real world experience and finding ways to express themselves. They're about to enter puberty and start acting more independently. They may see pornography, violent video games, mass shootings, and bullying, and they need to be able to talk with you without feeling shame or embarrassment. So it's important that you create a safe environment in your home where you can talk about anything. I really like the example Dave gave at the beginning, where they had the conversation about the inappropriate poster. Those are the kinds of open conversations that I did not have growing up. You can find out what they know once again. Ask, what are your friends doing today? What are your friends looking at? Why don't you want to do something? Why do you want to do something? Address their curiosity. If they're preoccupied with something, seek to understand why. Be sensitive to their emotions. I know that that one can be, as the black sheep of my family and the emotionally unstable attention seeker, that can be really hard for parents. My parents did their very best to be sensitive to my emotions, but it wasn't always enough. Encourage critical thinking and look for positives. This one I can't stress enough, especially for kids in this age range on the top end, 11 and 12, because so much of the content that they're being bombarded with every single day is negative. So much of the content that we as adults is also negative. And as they approach adulthood, they're only going to be exposed to more and more and more negative content. So the more positives that we can provide to the kids, the better off their outlook is going to be when they do encounter something negative. For teens, challenge them to consider complexities. They're interacting with media independently. They're either reading it, creating their own, they're sharing online. They'll hear about difficult subjects through the news, through video games, through their friends and chats without any of your knowledge. So share your values. Ask what they would do. Encourage open dialogue. Open-ended questions are key for the teens because it can draw out really the why behind the I'm fine or because. one word answers, right? Where they don't want to be open with you. And this one is also very important, something I didn't really have. Admit when you just don't know. Say you want to find out, or even with some of this stuff, especially with the teens, go find out together. Some additional things. Normalize the conversation around pornography. As a family, say the word. When something inappropriate pops up in a show, an ad, or an image, name it out loud clearly. That's pornography. Because when you say the word out loud, you break the taboo. You teach your child that they can bring these things into the light safely. And you follow that up with something along the lines of, that's not honoring God's design, or that's a lie about intimacy. Because when something comes out of our mouth, it is much easier for us to then believe. One of the resources that I've been introduced to as I've gone through some of the studying around this topic is called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior. This is by Kristen Jensen. And I wanted to highlight one of the strategies outlined in one of these books from the junior book. It's called Turn, Run, Tell. And what it does is it teaches the child to turn away from something bad, whether that's a picture or content, run to a safe adult and tell them what you saw. This is simple, it's memorable, and it's effective. I read a story from Defend Young Minds, which is the organization that Kristen Jensen oversees. And one of the stories they told was about a kid who was out with a friend, and one of his friends was watching pornography. And that kid said, "That's pornography." And then he turned, he went home, told his mom. His mom then said thank you. They had grace upon him, praised him. His mom talked to the other parent in the neighborhood, and that kid, ideally, didn't show that pornography to anyone else in the neighborhood, at least that day. So, what their child did could very well have kept someone who wasn't prepared, whose child wasn't prepared from being exposed after they had left the situation. My kid is struggling. Oh, there's a few ways you can tell, uh, or there's a few clues or indicators that can lead you to see that your kid is struggling with something, in particular, sexual sin. And this is true in a lot of teenagers anyway. So I don't want you to put too much stock in these items specifically. Additionally, parental intuition is, in my experience of my parents, usually pretty good. I was really bad at getting away with stuff. And so I would encourage you to trust your instincts, but also make sure that you're educated. Some of the signs can be increased isolation, risky behavior without any fear of consequences, and lying about their internet usage. I want to talk about shame and the cyclone of addiction because pornography is intentionally addictive and it is highly addictive. There's multiple variations of the shame cycle that are out there, but there's only one variation that I've seen of the cyclone of addiction. And so I want to break both of these down for you so that you can have a better understanding of them. For the shame cycle, first, you would make a mistake or engage in a destructive behavior. You yell at a child harshly, overreact to bad news, lose your temper. Then you feel deep guilt that turns to feelings of shame. You say, I'm stupid. No one has ever loved me. You continue to dwell on the mistake and feel too depressed to make amends or correct your mistake. So you'll start playing the incident or the behavior over and over again, like a record player. Then you decide to cheer yourself up by engaging in risky or destructive behaviors to self-soothe and forget about how bad you feel. Pornography. drinking, overeating, video games, shopping sprees. Finally, things even out. And eventually you find yourself getting triggered and making another mistake, and the cycle of shame starts all over again. On the other side of the screen, you have the cyclone of addiction. For me, I'm a very, very literal person. And this illustration is incredibly personal to me because it visualized a very systemic way that I could break down my addiction. There were four elements to my sex addiction and pornography addiction: root issues, a faulty mindset, continued cover up, and a destructive pattern. If you're stuck in an addiction, but you can start to identify these items, you can start to almost take them out like a Jenga tower. And you begin to weaken Satan's hold over you and make it more plausible and easier. I don't want to use the word easier. Uh, it will be less of a, I don't know the word I'm looking for, guys. I'm sorry. But essentially, it's not going to be as difficult as the path could be to overcome it. And it will accelerate your recovery. So, how do we dispel shame? We just talked about the shame cycle. How do we interrupt that? Well, the antidote to shame is compassion, honesty, and consistent parenting. Your voice of grace breaks the lie of isolation. Your child must know that you will listen, make an effort to understand, show compassion, and lovingly draw out repentance. Why do some people resort to feeling shame and going down the shame cycle in the first place? The short answer is they're trying to protect themselves. Think of this: when someone has a broken leg, it's normal to be guarded to prevent others from accidentally bumping into that leg. If we've never had a broken limb, it would be abnormal to guard against a limb being injured. And just like in that example, if someone has had a hurt at some point in their life, it is normal for that person to try to guard themselves against being hurt again. And this guarding behavior will look very much like a shame cycle. And the risky behaviors are often unhealthy coping skills to guard against being hurt and or to make oneself feel better. For the education piece, that is what I have for you guys tonight. We're going to dive into the resources, and so I'm going to share this again. If you are joining from a mobile device where you can't see the screen, or if you're joining by dialing in via your phone, I would encourage you to join from a device where you can see the screen or go back and watch the recording. In the past 2 years, I've had the privilege of meeting some incredible entrepreneurs, CTOs, CEOs, parents, and nonprofit organizations that are trying to make a difference in this space. They're trying to fight back against the sexual exploitation of humans and our children, and they're trying to fight back against the pornography industry, both in the courtroom, in the legislature, and in the home. The first resource I'm going to talk about, we've probably all heard of if you've been in the church any given amount of time, and that's Covenant Eyes. But what a lot of people don't realize about Covenant Eyes is that there's actually two apps, and it's not just an accountability tool. It's not just an accountability app or company, even. The Covenant Eyes app monitors and captures device activity, which is the traditional app that we're used to hearing about. But they also have an app called the Victory app, which is the companion app to the Covenant Eyes monitoring app. But the monitoring app is not required for you to use the Victory app. The Victory app actually has free videos and series for parents about accountability, relationships, and the dangers of pornography. There's a lot of really good content inside the Victory app. Additionally, Covenant Eyes offers 30-day free trials of their monitoring app. If you have trouble obtaining one, just use my contact information and I'd be happy to get one for you. Second resource I want to talk about is called Lead Me Not. I actually have become personal friends with the CEO and founder of this company, of this application. He's a great guy um, who has his own testimony about his addictions. But ultimately, this app uses AI and behavioral learning to learn your habits and help you make better decisions around your screen time. Think about this. Uh, sorry, my notes disappeared. You can define customizable trigger rules, such as apps or websites that pose challenges. For example, no more than 30 minutes on Facebook as a rule on your phone will either block Facebook or send an alert to your accountability partners. You can also have parental control and become an accountability partner on your child's device to receive alerts whenever they cross preset, decided upon digital boundaries. Angel, Angel Q, formerly Angel AI. I had the privilege of being at the reveal of this product, and the way I would describe it is a Chat GPT browser for kids. And I want to show you their trailer. Hopefully, this works, so you can get a better understanding of how this works.
You wouldn't believe what I found in Riley's search history. I'm dreading having to address it.
Oh my gosh, what a nightmare. I'm afraid to look. Catherine spent 7 hours glued to YouTube at her grandparents' Saturday. What were they thinking?
Have you seen this video yet? It's the latest viral challenge going around
social
school.
media is
I just found
affecting
out
their
this
mental
Where
health?
are our kids?
Has
anyone else's kids started? Anyone else? What child? Did any folks did it have a parent? Anyone else? I think these kids are different. I just found out.
Frustrated over here.
Technology is working against good parenting and the well-being of our children. What if we could harness the power of technology to foster happier, more connected families? Angel Q is a safe super browser for kids with no ads and no addictive algorithms. Angel is made for kids, empowering them to search.
Hi, Riley. What would you like to do today?
Research.
I love that you're curious. I'd love to help you research more into this topic.
Watch and explore through safe streaming, ensuring every online experience is safe, healthy, and fun. Angel works for parents, providing peace of mind knowing your child is having safe experiences and giving you insights into their interests. What's more, parents can text Angel and Angel will gently offboard them from screen time.
Screen time is now over. It's time to get your shoes on and go on a walk. Have a great day.
Angel Q. Imagine better.
It still makes me smile because it's just so cool. If you want to know more about Angel Q, it'll be on the resource sheet that'll go out after the call. Really cool product. They are very passionate about protecting families. Highly, highly recommend you check that out. All right. This is called OpenDNS that you see here. This is oh boy, I'm going to do my very best to explain this in a way that non-technical people can understand. If I fail, I'm sorry. Find me at church or visit OpenDNS's website, something of that sort. The reason I'm sharing this, even though it is somewhat technical, is because it is so effective. A lot of people will go buy third-party software to install on the devices in their home. This is good for accountability and a lot of times for filtering. But what do you do about the smart TVs? What do you do about all of these connected IoT devices that have access to the internet? Your refrigerators now, for crying out loud, they're connected to the internet. You can see the weather on your fridge. Well, what OpenDNS does is it runs it. You alter a couple of settings on your internet router, and instead of running all of your data through your ISP or your internet service provider's DNS addresses, domain name resolution service, it's going to run them through OpenDNS's service. And what OpenDNS's service does is it gives you the ability to control what does and doesn't resolve. So if I type 8.8.8.8 into a browser bar, I'm going to end up at google.com because domain name resolution service will see, oh, 8.8.8.8 translates to google.com. But if I tell my DNS server that I don't want google.com to resolve when a request, whether it's sent as the numbers or as the address, is sent to the DNS service, it will cut the connection. They won't get Google back. Think of it like asking a question of your browser. Will you show me Google? Essentially, what OpenDNS is going to do is say no. And it's going to do that for all of the devices in your home, not just the ones you can install software on. The other thing that's really cool about OpenDNS is they've gone out of their way for a lot of the common internet routers that are issued by your internet service providers. They've gone out of their way to actually include setup guides. So if you haven't gone out and bought a third-party router, chances are pretty good that there's a very basic setup guide for you to use. Highly recommend this product. The next product I want to talk about is Bark, and I do have a couple of sample devices behind me that I'm going to show you, but first I'm going to show you their video.
As a parent, you never want to see your child struggling with suicidal thoughts. But today, the threat is hidden deep within their phones. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for kids, and cyberbullying makes this threat a much more present reality. That's why I rely on Bark. Built by parents, for parents, Bark's award-winning dashboard monitors text messages, emails, and over 30 different apps and platforms for potential safety concerns. When Bark detects a digital danger, I receive automatic alerts so that I can deal with problems as they arise, while still respecting my son's privacy by not having to read through every single message. Bark even delivers research-backed recommendations on dealing with the issue. This helps me and my son work together, trust each other, and build a deeper bond. The screen time management and web filtering tools help me set healthy limits on how and when my kids use their devices. Plus, their data is always protected and private, giving me further peace of mind. To date, Bark has helped protect millions of children while detecting tens of thousands of severe self-harm situations. We spend so much every month just trying to keep ourselves entertained, but I find real value by investing in my son's wellness and safety. Bark brings us closer together. Hey.
Awesome. So we're going to see how well this works if I'm able to highlight my screen or not. Spotlight for everyone. Did I just come up big on everyone's screen?
Yep, we can
I
see
know
it.
what I'm doing. Oh my gosh, this is great. Okay, so this is a Bark phone. Looks just like the kid next door's phone. Difference is it has control over the social media access, whether you want them to have it or not. One of the other things that, especially in our culture, and I had a conversation with a mom about this actually this past weekend, that is becoming more and more prevalent is smartwatches. We want our kids to feel included, and we don't want to give them the kid item or the kid phone or the kid watch. We want them to feel like we trust them, that they fit in, that they don't have to be different for some reason. These watches have come a long way with some of these companies that I'm going to show you tonight. A lot of them look like an Apple Watch and function like an Apple Watch. And so been a lot of progress made where you don't have to sacrifice safety for aesthetics, and you don't have to sacrifice safety just so your kid can feel included or to avoid a conversation or to avoid an argument. And with that, I'm going to try and unspotlight myself. Look at that. Okay. And we'll come back to the presentation here. Maybe. All right. Now we're going to talk about TrueMe. This is another wireless service similar to Bark. Oh.
Jackson, is it supposed to be showing video right now?
Yeah, is it not showing?
No, I'm sorry, man.
Oh,
We can't see or hear
I'm so
anything.
sorry, guys.
Oh, but
Oh, I never clicked the share button.
you looked like you were really enjoying it.
I am. Oh, oh no. What did I do? I think I broke it. Hang on, guys.
Thanks.
We were on such a roll. I'm so sorry. All right. We can get back there together, I promise.
No worries.
All right. Are you with me?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, let's try this again.
I tell my kids I trust them, but I don't always trust the rest of the world. So my favorite number one feature is probably the photo filtering, that it blurs pictures before they hit to my kid's phone. So I don't have to worry about some girls or boys sending some picture that's totally inappropriate to my kids and them seeing it. I get it blurred before they see it. And then probably right up there with that is the text, that I can see every text that goes in or out of their phone. That way I can see what people are sending them and I can filter that. And even if it's deleted off of a phone, you can still have access to it as a parent. So you don't have to worry about anything there. What I would tell parents that are considering TrueMe is that it gives you the ability to give your kid a phone that lets them blend in with everyone else. Nobody wants to have a phone that looks like a little kid phone, especially once you hit that middle school, junior high, high school age. Nobody wants to look like they have a baby phone. So it looks like a normal phone. So it's great that way, but it gives you the ability to instantly from your own phone change how much access they have. So I can say, hey, you need full internet access for this class project right now, and I can instantly give it to them. And then as soon as that class period's over, I can instantly shut it off and set it back to just either save sites that we've approved or just no internet at all if they're young enough and I don't feel I need it. And so I feel like TrueMe lets me customize and know what's right for my child instead of having to go with a blanket phone that either shuts everything off or everything on or gives the world too much access to my child.
All right. So before I talk about TrueMe, in case this ever makes its way to Titiana over at Bark, that was not a Bark phone. That was a TrueMe phone. I picked up the wrong one. So Bark, I'm very sorry. It was a Bark watch though. Um, and so let me see if I can do a spotlight again. How did I do that?
We see
Spotlight.
you on the screen again if that's what you're trying to do.
There we go. All right. So this was a TrueMe phone that I showed you before, but it's a Galaxy phone, just like you could get at any other wireless store. TrueMe also has a watch, just like Bark. As you can see, the watch looks eerily similar to the Apple Watch on my wrist. Both of these companies are awesome. You have to, I know this can kind of feel like a QVC type thing that I'm putting together here for you, but my goal here is to help you understand what's available and help you understand that you're not alone, that there are for-profit, real mature companies out there fighting this fight alongside you. With that, we're going to move on to the next one. And I'm going to remember to share my screen again this time. All right. Gab. And this is the last phone service, I promise.
One of the biggest threats to our kids' mental health is in the palm of their hand. Screens capture their attention for over 8 hours a day. Too many of our kids are depressed. They have low self-esteem, feel addicted to their screens, and social media is making them feel worse about themselves. Let's help the dangers disappear with Safe Tech from Gab. Gab provides kid-safe phones and watches with no internet, social media, or unsafe apps. Gab, safely connected.
All right. And now I'm going to show you the Gab phone. There's two of them, actually. There's the Gab Phone Pro. Looks a lot like an iPhone. And the Gab Phone 4 also looks a lot like an iPhone. Now, I did not actually go pull a feature set, and I can't tell you what the difference between these two phones is. But now you have homework. And the last thing is the Gab Watch. I don't have the band on it here. But again, you can see the resemblance there. All right, back to the screen. Sorry, I get really excited about this stuff. So if I look a little giddy, I'm sorry.
One of the biggest.
All right, tech lists. This is a little bit different, and they're going to show you a little bit of why. But this can work for anybody, whether it's a child or an adult. But it's more about digital detox and digital sovereignty than it is about parental controls.
This may look like a smartphone, but it's not. It's so much better. Meet Wise Phone.
Wise Phone is the dumb phone that we're all after.
They finally created my favorite phone ever.
The Wise Phone literally will change the way you spend your time on a daily basis for the better.
It has all the basic tools: calling, texting, map, clock, calculator, great camera, but it doesn't have the social media and the games, all the normal junk apps that I'm always downloading and having to delete later.
Very desirable for many adults or even seniors who are looking for a basic phone.
It's an excellent transition device.
It's been 3 months and I 100% will never, ever, 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 ever go back to a smartphone.
I cannot thank Techless enough for creating this phone. I tell everyone about it.
Good value proposition for simplicity, for those that are looking for parental controls, and for digital minimalism.
If you want a phone that respects you instead of exploiting your attention, then the Wise Phone is for you.
Awesome. So that's Techless. I do not have a demo device from Techless, but again, looks a lot like an iPhone. All right, well, is it going to not let me move forward? Oh, I have that in there twice. That's fun. Okay, now we're going to get into, I just have a few reading resources that I want to tell you about. Some books, real books, I know, it's a foreign concept in today's world. They might be on Kindle, I'm not sure. I prefer the real thing. We'll go through some personal reflections of mine, a call to action, and then Q&A. This book in particular, if you were to go pick it up off the shelf right now, you're going to find a lot of the stuff that I talked about today. It was instrumental in helping me learn and understand and put myself in your guys' shoes as a non-parent wanting to make an impact in this space. One of the great things that this book points out is there is no one-size-fits-all solution. There's no one app, no one phone, no one filtering service, no one anything. The only thing that is the one-stop shop is Jesus Christ. Digital natives can teach you from a biblical worldview the impact of digital content on the brain of your child. It gives practical tips on how to raise a child in this digital age. And it also teaches you how to create an internet use plan using FARM, FARM. And I want to run through that real quick for you. FARM stands for filtering, accountability, review, and monitoring. When you put those four ingredients together, you can develop a an umbrella of sorts that is comprehensive but not limiting for your family. One of the cool things that this book taught me was that you can develop internet use plans both as a family and as individuals in your family. It talks about sitting down with your kids and actually helping them build their own internet use plan and empowering them, kind of like Dave and Tammy were talking about, to make their own good decisions rather than us relying on consequences or some other form of, oh, mom and dad were right again, to teach them. Uh, and one of the quotes from this book that I wanted to share was, responsible internet use can't be summed up by finding just an app or the right devices. It's about cultivating healthy online systems and behavior as a whole. The next book I wanted to talk about is Girl Talk. This is a newer book released by Ashley Jameson from Pure Desire. Ashley has her own story of addiction and struggle in her marriage and in her family. You're welcome to go check that out if you want. Very trustworthy source of information. This is an 8-week guide to help moms and daughters have honest conversations about sex. I have not had a chance to review the entire book. I've only reviewed excerpts. But having read other material, having met Ashley, having talked to Ashley, I believe, given the rise in women and girls becoming addicted to pornography and being exposed to pornography, this is going to be an instrumental tool in the arsenal of the parents of girls. The last book I want to talk about is called Safe. Safe is a book about creating a safe place in the church. It talks about what if the church was a place where it was okay to not be okay. Really diving in on when Jesus talked about um, being a place for the sick. The church should look more like a hospital. Becoming a safe place doesn't happen by accident. And just like I have a mission to turn the church into a safe place that can be a place of openness and vulnerability at all times, we have to be intentional about it. We also need to be intentional about this in our homes, in our families. It's not just going to work for the church and not going to and naturally going to come over to our families, or vice versa. If we implement a safe place at home, it's not naturally just going to happen at church. We have to be intentional about creating a safe climate, both for our kids and for us, to put away the shame, to dispel the shame, break the shame cycle, and be open and vulnerable, and get the practical steps and tools we need to revive a passion for grace instead of perfection, both in our homes and in the body of Christ. I want to make a couple personal reflections on what I talked about tonight, because as I have emphasized repeatedly, I am not a parent, but I did have parents. And there are some things that I've learned through my research and I'm continuing to learn that I could see that there may have been an opportunity to alter the trajectory of my sexual development. One of them would have been being educated on pornography and sex at home. I feel like that may have altered my response to my initial exposure. Having whole home filtering instead of locking down devices themselves could have forced me to seek help instead of pursuing escalating behaviors. Naming body parts and pornography for what they are out loud could have reduced shame and encouraged healthy conversations in the home. God made us how we are. Sex is his design for us. And I didn't have that feeling. I had a feeling that sex was dirty, sex was nasty, sex was something that I wasn't supposed to talk about or share with anybody because nobody around me did either. Quick call to action for you. I tried to keep this as simple as I could. Again, not a parent, but I think these are, if you take one of these three things and implement it in your week, you can begin to build a home that is safe digitally and begin building a sexual trajectory for your children that is going to reap uh, significant benefits. One of them, make a plan to protect your home. Number two, have a hard conversation. I know for me, when I have a hard conversation that I've been that I know I need to have, there's times where I'll intentionally avoid it. If you have one of those around this topic that you've been avoiding with your child, I would encourage you have it. And then challenge your own convictions. This is an issue that is not going away. There's a lot of work being done behind the scenes through a lot of nonprofits and for-profit organizations, volunteers, people like myself that are really getting involved to try and shift the culture around this in our country. But we have to have our own convictions and stand tall in them. And if we let things go, if we decide that, oh, that sin's not that bad, or we start to slip in what we believe and what the Bible says is true and what's not, we're going to start to end up in a place where or we're not going to be effective in how we are trying to change the culture. We have to be, we have to walk the walk. And so, if you have any convictions around purity or what is pornography, which is something I'd love to talk about with you, if you're not sure, what is pornography specifically, I would challenge you to examine those convictions and really reestablish them. And with that, we'll move to a Q&A. And thank you for letting me share.
Jackson, thank you so much. Two quick things. One, if you'll open up participants and then give Tammy and me back the that's on the bottom bar. Give us back the host ability. That will help us.
Okay.
For everyone on the call, I know we've kept you longer than normal. Thank you for sticking with us tonight. I hope this has been really helpful. Just my every month disclaimer, if you need to drop off, you're not offending anybody. We are so grateful you joined us. But for those of you who want to stay and ask questions, we will stay on and work through your questions. So if you need to go, thank you for your time. We did record this. We will post it. And if you don't mind stopping the recording so we can have personal questions that aren't so anyway, yeah, if you need to drop off, feel free. But Jackson, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. This was so helpful. If you do have a question, unmute yourself and go ahead, and we'll just stay on as long as we need to work through questions.
So you don't want me to record it
No.
in case it's private?
Yep.
What if it's not?
It doesn't.
Okay, so Jackson, can you give us the definition of pornography?
Yes, so the best definition of pornography is what causes you to look with lustful intent. What causes your heart to treat someone as a sexual object? What do you store in your memory for masturbation fantasies? Not just the image or video itself, but considering the lust that comes from seeking these things for your sexual gratification. That is porn to you.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. All right, so I just wanted to add to the recording some questions that were asked. I don't remember exactly how they were asked. Do you?
Oh, no, because I don't know what you have written down.
So it was asked if you've introduced information too early, or I'm sorry, you gave your kid too many freedoms. Someone asked us if I gave my kid a cell phone. I never had controls on it. I didn't control their usage. What do I do now? And what I shared with them is that it's important to realize that the goal is self-awareness in our kids and self-regulation. And that's something that starts as kids that we continue for the rest of our life, needing to become self-aware and self-regulating. So whether we introduce something too early, we can help our kids understand that they may have that freedom to be able to be using the phone as long as they're using it, or they don't have the freedom to have access to the websites endlessly because there's bad stuff out there. Like we're just teaching them that this is a part of our life. And for our family, what we did is we introduced social media in their junior year of high school. Before that, we didn't have a reason for it. So we just didn't, not that I remember, we didn't introduce it, but definitely by the junior year, we do recommend that parents introduce it if they haven't, because you need to have time to teach them how to be self-aware of what social media does to them emotionally and mentally, and also for them to learn to self-regulate. And so their junior year, we introduced it. By their senior year, we wanted them to talk with us about how much time they thought they should use on it. It was much more them in control of based on what they felt they could manage. How much self-control did they have? And what we did is on Sunday nights, we would have their phones at the table and say, okay, everybody pull up your phone usage. And we would look at how much time do we spend on Instagram? How much time do we spend on Pinterest? How much time were we on texting? And we all talked about it, parents too, about our how well did we do? And it was humbling. And it was just eye-opening that sometimes we were wasting hours and hours a day. And we didn't do it in a place of shaming our kids, but for them to become self-aware. And then we would talk about, well, what's your goals for this next week? And then they could set, now again, if they were, junior, we might set the parameters and say, okay, well, let's reduce this time to 1 hour a day. But again, with their seniors, it was much more like, well, what do you think? And how much time do you want to have? And we would have them set boundaries. They had the code to make it longer if they needed to. But again, it's this idea that it's okay to reevaluate. It's okay, to mess up. But it's good to put restrictions back on when needed. And then as our kids were adults, they do this constantly, and they'll tell us, I'm not on Instagram anymore, Mom. I didn't have self-control. Or one daughter, we just had a talk 2 days ago about modesty and clothing choices. And she was really struggling because she feels like when she's on social media, girls they're just dressing so immodest that she starts to desire to want to dress like that to fit in. And she's an adult sharing this with me. And so she said, I just need to get off of social media because it's influencing how I dress, or her desires for how she dresses. And then I think, so I said that on the call. And then also just, even though we gave our kids social media their junior year, there were still blocks for pornography. And I think it was just pornography for our family. So, for example, I was the only one with the code in our family. Dave he didn't feel he had the freedom to look at anything online. And so I had the code for the family. At any time, if I start struggling with it, I would ask someone outside of our home to manage it for us if I felt I needed that support. There's no shame in that. But for our family, my kids had, they didn't have full access. And then when they left the home, then eventually when they bought devices as adults, then they have now full access. But they know what to do. They know how to set the safety guides on their phones. And it hasn't been a struggle for them with pornography. If it had been, that would be a different route. We would encourage them to, look at the options that Jackson talked about tonight to protect themselves further. But the greatest thing is that creating that safe place. And we also talked a lot with our kids about curiosity and how normal that is. We talked a lot about temptation. Again, that's very normal. It's what we do when we have curiosity. It's what we do when we have temptation. And we'll work on getting some Bible studies up about that. And then lastly, I know I'm saying a lot, but we didn't record this earlier when we had Q&A. But again, remember when you're having these discussions about pornography, that it's always about the why, which is the heart behind it, which is that we want to cherish our future spouse one day. We want to protect our minds to only love them and their body and the way God created them. Whereas if we get exposed to pornography, which as Jackson described, it can just be even a woman in lingerie or a woman dressed inappropriate on a cover of an album, that can distort our view of beauty and affect how we view our spouse. And we want to protect that. That's the why. And then the how, again, is where we get into self-regulating and setting boundaries. And Dave, you talked about if the child opens up. Can you share that again?
Yeah, I just shared that if your child comes to you and opens up with you about struggling with pornography, it's so important that you praise them for their vulnerability and their courage and their willingness to talk with you. Because what tends to happen in parents is we're so afraid of this topic that if our kid starts to share with us that they're struggling with it, our fears can take over, and that reaction can shut down our child, and then we can race off to cut everything out that could possibly bring pornography in. And our response becomes this massive amount of prohibition. And we miss the opportunity to really partner with our child, to empathize with our child, to help our child understand our journey and how we understand those temptations and what motivates us, and to partner with them. And so if you don't know in the moment how to respond to your child, then we really encourage you to really lift them up for their courage and their openness and their vulnerability, and tell them, you can pray together about it, or you can tell your child how proud you are of them for being vulnerable and open, but you want to take a little bit of time and pray about it and think about it, and let's pick up this conversation tomorrow morning. And then, get on the phone and reach out and get help from the community so that you feel empowered to have a productive, not shame-filled conversation that continues to create a safe and open environment where your kid can tell you when they make mistakes, because they all will. Even the child that never, by the grace of God, never gets exposed to pornography is going to lust after someone, or is going to feel good when someone notices their physical beauty. And you want your children to be able to tell you the truth about what they're going through. And that starts with us telling our children the truth about our own temptations at an age appropriate level, bringing them on our journey, and then going through the journey of life together. Just wanted to make sure I communicated that if you get shocked by your kid's confession, put yourself in check, focus your attention on how grateful you are that they told you the truth. And then if you feel prepared in the moment to engage, go for it. But if you need to take the evening to pray, encourage them and tell them you'll pick up the conversation the next day, but you're so grateful that they felt secure enough with you to be that vulnerable, and you know how hard it was. So,
yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Jackson, that you wish your parents had told you?
No shame in my parents, of course, but I think that my parents did what they thought was best at the times they thought was best, and there was nothing malicious there, just to be clear. I had a great family, a great upbringing. I was given every opportunity to succeed, and I'm responsible for my own choices. Um, but I think that the why that you talked about, Tammy, um, there's one thing that I think is imperative we realize or iterate, and that is the why is the cross. We look at what Jesus did for us, and this can be explained at any age level. But we look at what Jesus did for us by paying the ultimate price to reconcile us with God, and that is why we do the things that we do. Um, and I know that that can be a little broad and overarching, but especially when it comes to these intense conversations, it can make it feel a little bit more graceful when you bring Jesus into the picture.
Yeah. No, I think it's super important. I think one of the things we'll often say to people is that when he had the idea of you in his mind, he also foresaw all your sin. And despite knowing every sin you'd commit from your first breath to your last, he liked the idea of you so much that he still made you.
Yeah.
Right. And none of our sin surprises God. It surprises us. It may surprise those around us, but none of it surprises God. And knowing our sin, he loved the idea of us so much that he went through with the creation of us, but he also wove into our journey all the help we would need to recover from all the things we went through. We just have to look up and access it. And I think one of those things, and you're absolutely right about the why, why do we change? Why do we repent? It's because of the cross. I think one of the things we're constantly trying to help mentor parents in, because it very well might have been the biggest thing that changed our parenting, was understanding that that God gives us instructions and there's always a reason behind the instruction.
Wisdom.
There's wisdom behind the instruction. David in Psalms writes, "Help me understand your precepts so that I may obey them with all of your heart." Right. And so the more we as parents can get in touch with the why God gives us, God, yeah, God doesn't say don't lust because it's bad, right? God is thinking ahead to your future spouse and this intimacy that he wants you to have, and the gift your spouse is to you and the gift you are to your spouse. And so he's giving us all the ingredients long before we're married to make that relationship phenomenal and pure and beautiful, where we will love each other and will be attracted to each other no matter how old and decrepit we become. Right. So that's what God wants for us. So he's trying to create that. And young people, without their parents' help, don't know why I can't look at that.
Yeah.
Well, and it becomes rules instead of a love story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
Like if you don't have the why, and the why is only rooted in either because or the consequence,
Yeah.
you lose the love story of God's love for you.
Yeah.
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 Well, thank